Poland says a Russian-made missile has killed 2 people on its territory, but US President Joe Biden says it's unlikely the weapon was fired from Russia.
At least a dozen regions have been hit across Ukraine as Moscow targets the country's energy infrastructure, leaving half of Kyiv without power.
Former US President Donald Trump launches his 3rd bid for the White House, despite poor midterm results that many Republicans have blamed on him.
After years of delays and billions in cost overruns, NASA's new moon rocket has blasted off from Cape Canaveral. Poland has blamed a Russian-made missile for killing 2 people when it fell in the eastern part of its country. However, its foreign ministry has not said who fired it. Both sides in the Russia-Ukraine conflict have used Russian-made munitions, and investigators still need to establish the facts. The missile fell on farmland near Poland's border with Ukraine. It marks the first time in the Russia-Ukraine conflict that Russian-made weapons appear to have come down on a NATO country. Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki has appeared on television calling on Poles to keep calm while the facts are established. The country's president said the incident may be a one-off. It remains unclear whether the missile was fired by Russia or if it resulted from Ukraine's anti-missile defense system shooting down a weapon. In connection with the current situation that we had foreseen, a government spokesman said, procedures have been implemented, including, among other things, a decision to increase the readiness of some combat units and other uniformed services in our country. The Russian Ministry of Defense has called the alleged fall of Russian missiles a provocation and has strongly denied being behind any strikes on targets near the Ukraine-Poland border, saying that photos of purported damage have nothing to do with Russian weapons. NATO ambassadors are to meet today at the request of Poland on the basis of the alliance's Article 4, which allows members to raise issues related to their security. Warsaw did not mention Article 5 of the treaty, which states that an armed attack on one member is an attack on all.
US President Joe Biden called an emergency meeting with G7 and NATO leaders in Indonesia after Poland blamed a Russian-made missile for the strike. Biden offered support to Warsaw, but said initial information suggests it's unlikely the missile was fired from Russia.
And I'm going to make sure we figure out exactly what happened. Our sympathy goes out to apparently 2 people were killed. And then we're going to collectively determine our next step as we investigate and proceed. There was total unanimity among the folks at the table.
Various messages of support and solidarity for Poland have been sent via social media, including one from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and another from UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Both have called for the quick establishment of the facts. Ukraine's President Zelensky has described the missile strike on Poland as a very significant escalation of the war. The United Nations Security Council is to raise the issue of the situation in Ukraine and the strike in Poland later today at a previously scheduled meeting in New York.
Most G20 members condemn the war in Ukraine. The draft final statement from the group's summit in Indonesia says the compromise wording came after much wrangling among members on a final day in which the agenda was overtaken by the news of a missile landing in Polish territory. Before leaving the summit, Russia's representative, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, had described the draft declaration as having been politicized by Ukraine's Western allies. G20 members have been grappling with a whole raft of issues, from raging inflation, food insecurity and hunger to the consequences of climate change. The jury is out on whether anything has been achieved. There is agreement, though, on the fact that Russia's invasion of its neighbour has rattled the global economy, and much of the world will be reeling from its effects for some time to come.
Moscow has resumed its strikes across Ukraine. targeting the country's energy infrastructure again. At least a dozen regions have been hit and a person was killed in a residential building. Half of Kyiv is without power, and the situation in the capital is critical. Numerous cities across the country have been hit. The attacks come a day after President Zelensky's emotional visit to liberated Kherson. In a tweet, Ukraine's foreign minister has claimed that these bombings are the peace that Russia claims to seek. He has accused Moscow of resorting to terror. The deafening noise of the bombs in many Ukrainian cities contrasts with the quiet of the nearby town of Novkhovka, occupied by Russia. The Moscow-imposed authorities evacuated it on Tuesday in the face of advancing Ukrainian troops. Meanwhile, Moscow continues to claim that everything is going according to plan. Its troops have made advances in the Donetsk region. In Kherson City, the story is different. The withdrawal of Russian troops have allowed families separated by the war to see each other once again.
Germany has marked the completion of the country's first liquefied natural gas terminal near the North Sea port of Wilhelmshaven. Due to open in January, the facility is part of Berlin's push to become independent of Russian energy sources. Russian gas used to account for half of the country's supply. Project manager Christian Janssen says an LNG tanker will unload gas at the site once a week in a bid to prevent a national energy crunch.
The capacity of the terminal is about 5 billion cubic meters. With that, you can supply about 2.5 million to 5 million households a year. This terminal is an essential building block for Germany's security of supply. We can use it to import about 8% of Germany's natural gas consumption.
Most of the arriving tankers are coming from the Netherlands and Belgium. A storage facility and regasification plant are still needed. However, both are expected to arrive next month. Russia hasn't delivered any gas to Germany since the end of August. Donald Trump is to mount a third White House campaign, launching an early start to the 2024 presidential race. He made his much-expected announcement from his home in Florida. The former president has massive campaign funding and remains hugely popular with the Republican base.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
But his declaration comes just a week after an underwhelming midterm showing for Republicans, for which he has been blamed, with a predicted red wave failing to materialize. Voters largely rejected candidates who backed Trump's baseless claims of election fraud in 2020, and many of his high-profile picks for office struggled or lost outright.
And here we go.
After years of delays and billions in cost overruns, NASA's new moon rocket has blasted off on its debut flight.
3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together.
The launch took place at Cape Canaveral in Florida with 3 test dummies aboard.
On the core stage and 2 solid rocket boosters now propelling the vehicle at 128 miles per hour.
If all goes well, the capsule will go into orbit around the moon before returning to Earth with a splashdown in the Pacific in December.
You're looking at 8.8 million pounds and 420
NASA's ultimate goal is to put astronauts back on the moon for the first time since the Apollo mission ended 50 years ago.
confirmation that the solid rocket